With me is Christina Booth. And Christina, after those first 3 minutes, then you have some other things you need to be prepared for, maybe even a 72-hour kit. How do we put one together?
Okay, what you need to know about in the first 72 hours of an emergency is there's two different types of scenarios that you need to be aware of. The first is flight versus aftermath. If it's a type of an emergency where you need to actually leave your home, then that would be considered a flight or an evacuation scenario. And so you need to have a 72-hour emergency kit that is portable, that contains things in it such as food and water and first aid. And you can personalize that to have whatever you want in it for your family. You can have comfort items like teddy bears or things, coloring books for your children or whatever. This would be for going to a shelter, and that would be for evacuation. You want to have these type of kits somewhere stored, like in a closet or underneath your bed, and every child should have one with their own personal things in it, and adults should have one. And those would be something you would grab right away and you would take off with, and you'd go to the shelter where you're told to go. Now, if it's a type of emergency where you do not have to evacuate and you get to stay inside your home, then that's considered an aftermath scenario. And you would want to have the same type of supplies, but in a bigger abundance. And water and first aid would be your two most critical things. Water in an emergency, even though people don't think about that, is probably one of the most important things, because first of all, you have to have water to live, obviously. And in a severe earthquake, you're probably going to lose the utilities and we won't have water. You need water to flush your toilets, you need water to drink, to clean up with, and so you can never have enough water stored.
Well, now, question. Suppose I say, well, gee, do I really need a big first aid kit? How much first aid do I have to know? My neighbor's a doctor, or I have a neighbor that's a nurse. Well, they'll be there to take care of me. Is that likely going to happen?
That is not likely going to happen. That's not when it's going to happen. A lot of people feel that way, and they have this false sense of security that they have firemen in their neighborhood, that type of thing. But what's going to happen is all of those people will immediately be called to their positions, to their jobs, and they will be gone from your community. And so it's your responsibility to be trained in CPR and in first aid, and there's no such thing as too much first aid. You never could have too much first aid supplies.
Well, thank you very much. This is probably one of the most important areas of a big emergency, to have a 72-hour kit and be prepared for the initial aftermath of a big emergency.
Well, we're here at the Amateur Radio booth, and I'm here with Heikel Peschel, and we're going to be talking about the communication that goes on in the aftermath of an emergency. Heikel, could you tell me a little bit about how communication is in the aftermath of an emergency, and how else we can communicate with the rest of the community once we start with, let's say, the ham radios?
Certainly could. Here we have a setup to talk to all the different emergency groups in the county. We do our primary communication with the County Emergency Operations Center, which is located on top of one of the local hills, and they have people there who can communicate with all the different parts of the county: hospitals, fire, police, any sort of emergency equipment. We also have equipment that can talk to one another, different volunteer groups that support and help out the county in that regard.
How do you get the message out to the people once you receive it from the other radio stations?
Well, we use radios. A little radio like an FRS radio, a little fancier radio like a little ham radio critter. These radios can use the repeater stations on top of the Saddleback, on top of Santiago Peak, to communicate all over the county so that we can talk to one another.
Do you need some sort of a license? Do you need to go to a class? How does that work?
Well, this is a very short-range radio. Doesn't require a license. You can buy it in almost any electronics shop. This radio requires a license. You can get a license by picking up the book, taking the test through a standard testing group, like one of ours here, called the South Orange Amateur Radio Association. But basically, you pick up the classes. You have books here of two different variations, technician entry-level books. You study them, you do the test, you get your license, and then you can talk. And you can talk on any of these radios wherever you need to.
So in the aftermath of an emergency, what about our cell phones? Will we be able to use those?
Yes, you will, as long as the cell sites are still up and as long as they're not overcrowded by everybody else wanting to use them. It's just like anything else. In an emergency, everything fills up and you may just get a busy signal.
Thank you very much, Heikel. That's great information.
Thank you.